chairman of the board of OpenAI. And Bret, you have spent many, many years in Silicon Valley. You have worked for pretty much all the big names there, everybody from Facebook, Twitter, Salesforce, Google, where you actually led the team that invented Google Maps. You are also responsible for the like button. You've seen it all, but I wonder if you've ever seen anything like the news we saw just at the end of last week, where it emerged that Elon Musk, former backer of OpenAI, early backer of OpenAI, is seeking damages of up to $134 billion from OpenAI and Microsoft for what he calls the wrongful gains that were made after he left. I wonder, what do you make of that?
Well, look, as we've said from the beginning, we believe these claims are baseless. And as chairman of the board, I'm really focused on one thing, which is the OpenAI Foundation. And it is already one of the most well-resourced foundations in the world. And I think pursuing what I believe is one of the most important missions right now, which is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits humanity, which is obviously a topic here at Davos, because it's an incredible new technology, but there's so many interesting issues we need to overcome to make sure it benefits humanity, from safety to jobs to how can companies successfully absorb it. So that's what I'm focused on, and it's a really interesting topic of discussion here in Switzerland.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder, when you're up against someone with virtually unlimited financial firepower like Elon Musk, is it not something of a concern for OpenAI?
Yeah, I think OpenAI in particular has come to be sort of the focal point of this transformation that the entire world is going through with AI. So there's lots of people focused on this, for better or for worse. I wouldn't be in this job if I weren't capable of dealing with it. But as I mentioned, I think I don't mean to minimize its import, but I think we are focused on these larger social issues. That's what it means to be a foundation, is focused on our mission. And our mission is more than an individual conflict, it's something bigger, and that's what I try to spend my time on. Right,
so I mean, as you say, you are right in the middle of this extraordinary AI investment boom, this AI gold rush, as it's sometimes called. You said last year, though, you thought we were in a bubble, an AI bubble, and a lot of people will lose a lot of money. I wonder if you still think that is the case.
My opinion is nuanced here. I think if you look back at the dot-com bubble of the late 90s, in one sense it was a bubble, in the sense that there were lots of investments and people did lose a lot of money. On the other hand, that bubble gave birth to some of the most important technologies and companies that exist today, from Amazon to Google and Salesforce and PayPal and eBay. And none of those companies would have existed without the dot-com bubble. As I joke, your perspective on the dot-com bubble was very different if you went all in on buy.com versus Amazon.com. For those listeners who don't know buy.com it was another e-commerce solution that didn't necessarily have the traction of Amazon. I think we'll see the same thing in AI. I think we will see some of the most important consumer and enterprise technology companies of this next generation created in this moment that will come to be not only worth a lot of money, but have an impact on our lives personally. And I think because everyone knows AI is going to have an impact, there's a lot of not necessarily smart money being applied in the market. We'll also see people lose money as well. And I think that is for better or for the worse. I think when you have a technology that is so self-evidently transformative, you tend to get both. And I think that's the world we're in right now.
And should the bubble burst, do you see it being a big bang or a slow seepage of air? In other words, how financially impactful is it likely to be, do you think?
I'm not sure I know, but my intuition is that AI is actually having a really big positive economic impact. My day job is running Sierra, as you alluded to, which builds AI agents for customer experience. And we're serving a large percentage of the Fortune 100 already, established businesses getting real value from this technology. You know, in bubbles where it's all hopes and dreams and hype, that's where you tend to get bubble bursts. My intuition is this is a little different because the technology is actually providing such real value. I couldn't imagine traveling to a place like Davos without ChatGPT being my travel agent. We are all getting value from this in our professional and personal lives already. So my intuition is we'll see a bit of a reset over time, but I'm quite optimistic that the impact is quite financially real at this point, which I think will sort of temper the response.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the other thing that's changing very fast as ever is the whole competitive landscape when it comes to AI. I just wonder how worried OpenAI is right at this juncture, because although ChatGPT just stunned the world when it came out, competitors have raced to catch up. And just recently we've seen Anthropic's Claude Code has been something that has really taken people a bit by surprise, I think. And also Google's Gemini has raced up. And then of course it was just last week the big deal with Apple and Google, where Apple's decided that Google AI are going to be used in iPhones and Siri. How worried is OpenAI about this competition at the moment?
I think OpenAI is in a really remarkably good position. I think ChatGPT is synonymous with AI for most consumers, including myself. Codex is an amazing software engineering agent that I think has really shown remarkable results recently. I was just reading about a mathematician who helped prove an unproven math conjecture using the GPT 5.2 model. And then, OpenAI's enterprise business is also extremely strong. And I think it's one of the few organizations that has strength in sort of all three of those areas. But this is, I think, the reason why everyone's talking about AI here in Davos is that I think the world recognizes the impact of this technology. We're not entitled to the market ourselves, and I think competition is good. So there are points where a competitor does something better, and I think this is capitalism at work, and it will make us work harder. But I feel very positive about the prospects of OpenAI competitively.
I mean, have you used Claude Code yourself?
I've tried to use all these products, including Claude Code.
Yeah, I mean, were you surprised at the attention that it's received just recently?
I'm not. I think two of the most shovel-ready opportunities in AI are software engineering and customer service. Customer service is where Sierra plays, helping people make AI agents that can pick up the phone rather than press 2 for service. And software engineering enables people writing software to use an agent to generate their code rather than typing it themselves. If you look at the past 20 years, probably the job that's been in most scarce supply is software engineering. It's often been the limiting factor for companies to digitize their business. And now you have AI that's capable of doing that. I think that's really exciting, and because of the market demand, I think the idea that there's excitement around other software engineering agents doesn't surprise me at all. And in fact, there's a great company called Cursor based in San Francisco. There's a company called Cognition, and they're all actually quite credible companies. I obviously am a huge fan of Codex, OpenAI's agent, but when you look at the big opportunities in AI, I think you're going to see a lot of companies pursuing all of them.
Hello and welcome to the Davos Daily Show, and to Odile Renaud-Basso, the President of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Welcome, Odile. Thank you for joining us on what I know is a very busy time for you at Davos.
Thank you for having me.
Let's dive straight in, because obviously we have Donald Trump coming tomorrow to the World Economic Forum. And the headlines have been dominated by his comments on Greenland and tension between Denmark and other NATO members and the United States. But there is a far more important conflict that is actually right on the doorstep for the EBRD, and one in which you're heavily concerned with: Ukraine. I know the EBRD is the number one institutional investor, and looking at prospects for reconstruction when, as we hope, peace eventually comes.
Yeah. I mean, just before we leave OpenAI, one big development that everybody's been really very keen to see emerge is the result of the collaboration between Johnny Ive, Apple's former chief designer, and OpenAI on some AI devices. When are we going to see that?
Well, I can't announce anything today, but good try. But I think if you look at the past 10 years, if you meet anyone between the age of 15 and 25, they're probably staring at a glowing rectangle. And now that AI enables us to converse with computers, I don't know if you've tried advanced voice mode from ChatGPT, but it's remarkable. You can talk to this piece of software, it understands you, and it talks back. does it afford an opportunity for a new hardware form factor? And I think that's something that a lot of people in the technology world are excited about, because you've seen the evolution from punch cards to terminals and mice and keyboard to touch screens, which was thank you, Steve Jobs, for that evolution. And now people are saying, is there a device beyond the touchscreen? And I'm not sure we know the answer yet. This is what innovation is. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and companies like OpenAI and great designers like Johnny Ive are trying to imagine that future. But I think it's positive. If you watch a sci-fi movie, most people aren't staring at little glowing rectangles, right? The technology melts away. And so I think AI affords the opportunity for something new, and I think that's really exciting, even though I don't think anyone knows what it will be yet.
Can we expect it this year? I mean, everybody is thinking it's coming this
Again,
year.
no announcements today.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, maybe not this year. Maybe 2027.
No comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a device, and it's probably not going to be a screen, and you're going to be able to access ChatGPT and everything else through it. And I mean, it's going to be a wearable, I guess, of some description.
As I said, no comment. I think Johnny's rightfully very secretive. But as I said, I'm excited to see the future of how we engage with computers. And if you just look at your life, us as individuals before and after the smartphone, it's really different, right? And so I think not just OpenAI, but I think a lot of people are thinking about, now that computers are conversational, what new form factors are capable. And it won't just be OpenAI imagining this future, but I can say with a great deal of confidence that 10 years from now it will feel very different than today, and that's pretty exciting.
Now, Sierra was only founded in 2023. Its clients already include some quite big names in health insurance, retail, and of course tech, as one would expect. You'd expect tech companies to be most interested really in customer service, AI agents. But it's interesting that you are actually selling to big established companies. I just wonder, why do you think that is? And perhaps you could talk about some examples of how big, older companies are using Sierra.
Yeah, I'll sort of start with why did we start this firm? So most companies, especially consumer companies, have tens or even hundreds of millions of customers around the globe. And it's hard to you can't really afford to have a real conversation with them. If you call someone on the phone, it might cost £10. And if you have a company whose revenue from you is only £10 per year, the math just doesn't work out. And as a consequence, it's often hard for us to actually reach most of the companies we work with, whether it's your mobile phone provider or a retailer. Now with AI agents, we've digitized that last remaining analog channel, which is the telephone. I think probably I can say 100% of reviewers, no one likes waiting on hold. It's one of the worst things possible as a consumer. Well, now instead of waiting on hold, an AI agent can pick up the phone and just talk to you, and can talk to you in hundreds of languages, and it can have access to your account, whether you're returning an order or maybe reporting a suspicious transaction on your credit card, and it can do so in seconds. And I think the reason why so many larger firms in the UK, we work with folks like Next and Deliveroo, in the US, companies like Rocket Mortgage, actually doing over $1 billion of mortgage folders a month for them. It's kind of remarkable to see the traction in such a wide range of industries. And I think it's because this technology is so consumer friendly. If you can provide a service that's always on, multilingual, available 24/7, and our customers don't need to wait on hold anymore, it's really one of those few win-wins in AI right now.
Right, but I mean, customers are still aware that they're not talking to a human the first time that they talk to a Sierra agent, presumably.
That's right. Are these agents identify as AI? And I'll make a bold prediction here, which is, I think we're going to get to the point where if you call and there isn't an AI, you're going to ask for it. Like, isn't there an AI I can talk to?
Okay, that is a bold prediction.
Here's my thought.
I'm going to say that I'm not going to be the first one saying that.
Well, I won't speak to your personal preferences, but if I'm making a reservation at a restaurant, I prefer to use the digital technology than calling the front desk. It tends to be faster. It tends to be, the interface is nice. If my time isn't available, I can see all the other times available. I love using things like Resi and OpenTable to do that. And it might just be generational, but I seek that out. These AI agents are so capable, so fast, multilingual. They can do things that just weren't possible before. And I think it won't necessarily, it doesn't devalue the human-to-human interactions, but I think there are certain interactions where we just want it done. We don't necessarily need a consultation. We just want a reservation. We just want to file that warranty claim. We just want to understand why our service was disrupted, whatever it may be. And I think CEOs and chief digital officers now have a tool in their tool belt they didn't have before, which is AI agents. And I think it's going to really transform particularly consumer brands, but we're really seeing it in such a wide range of industries, from healthcare. I mean, as one example, in the United States, there's a company called Cigna, a Fortune 20 healthcare company. They went live with their AI agent in 2 months. And really changing the way we file claims or finding providers in network, things that might not be familiar to some of your listeners in the UK, but we spend 18% of our GDP in the US on healthcare, and if there's a way AI agents could make it slightly more productive, it would be a huge win for everyone involved.
Okay, so let's get to the big question that I think is really preoccupying a lot of people this week in Davos, but just more generally, and it is this, which is, okay, so companies are spending enormous amounts of money now on everything from AI agents to all sorts of other AI technologies. The question is, when are they going to see a return that justifies those investments? Now, would you say that your customers are anywhere close to seeing that yet? You've only been going since 2023, but still. Are you confident they're going to, and already are, seeing that impact on the bottom line?
Our customers are, and whether it's telecommunications companies like SiriusXM and DirecTV, or healthcare companies like Cigna, or large consumer brands like Next, the wonderful UK-based retailer, all of these brands are seeing significant returns on investment. And essentially, it's lowering the cost of what it means to interact with their clients, which means they can either save money, or perhaps I think the more interesting thing is, if you have a bigger budget for interacting with your customers, can you grow sales? Can you actually grow your net promoter score? Can you gain a competitive advantage? I think lots of these articles sort of being written about return on AI, I think conflate a lot of different AI projects. And when I mentioned, I think the two most interesting shovel-ready opportunities in AI are software engineering and customer service. Most of the companies I talk to using AI agents for those two domains are getting a return. There's a whole other category of AI where people are taking AI models and trying to build their own. And the way I see it is, going back to my parallels to the dot-com bubble, we're roughly in the 1995 of building websites, we're roughly in that era of building AI agents. I think most companies don't want to build software. They just want to buy a solution that works off the shelf. And because AI is a relatively immature technology, those solutions don't exist for every domain. Maybe you want an AI agent to help onboard vendors. Maybe you want an AI agent to help audit your financials. Right now, there isn't an obvious winning solution in each of those spaces. In 3 years, there will be. And so as a consequence, companies are taking the component parts and building it themselves. And as you can imagine, just getting widely varying results there. There are solutions in customer service like Sierra, which is great. And I think we're just in a maturation period in the industry.
Yeah.
I was looking, we did a conference recently, and I was looking at historical articles about the internet, and there was one from 1997 in Wired magazine about companies spending $20 million to add a login form to their website, and how most of the projects failed. And you read it now and it feels like a vestige of the past. We may be in that era of building agents is the short of it, but I wouldn't lose hope in the technology. I think we're just at an early stage of the adoption curve.
Well, that's interesting, because of course there was this really striking report last year from MIT that showed that despite the billions of dollars the businesses are investing overall in AI, 95% of organizations were getting zero return. I mean, that was, in fact, share prices fell on the back of that report. People were really, I think it perhaps because it gelled or it solidified a sense that, all of this money's being spent, but where are we seeing the return? But, I mean, do you think that when that research is repeated, that the same result will occur this year?
I think it will get better and better. I think there's a phenomenon I see in the industry I like to call AI tourism. Because boards and CEOs are so excited about AI, they're rightfully demanding from companies, what is your AI strategy? And I think inartfully applied, you can end up doing lots of AI projects that are maybe aimless, might be too critical, but not necessarily particularly focused on driving a business outcome. And obviously there's a certain self-serving nature answer to this question, but I would say focus on the areas where AI can have an effect. have a big call center, call Sierra. If you have a big software engineering team, use one of the software engineering agents. Pick the places where there's social validation from large firms in the world that are seeing success now. Don't let perfect get in the way of progress, and pick some interesting applications right now. But my optimistic take is I think if we do that survey again in a few years, just because of the availability of applied AI solutions, I think we'll see very different results.
Okay, so you just mentioned call centers. How long is it going to be before we see the end of call centers because of products like Sierra?
I'm not sure we will, and I'll give you why we might and why we might not, but I think technology has always changed the jobs that we do. One of the more famous examples is the automated teller machine, the ATM. In most parts of the world, there aren't actually fewer bank branches because of the ATM. And in fact, there aren't even fewer people in those bank branches. They just do different things. And so I think right now, when you have a new technology, you tend to reflect it through the lens of what we currently do, when in fact, that's not the way the economy works. What ends up happening is you end up automating some things, and then you decide, okay, what are we gonna do? Are you gonna pass all that money on to shareholders? Maybe, but that's not the way capitalism works. You have competition. You can't afford to do that. And so I think right now, I think a lot of people understandably lack the creativity to think about the second order effects. You may decide actually that even though you're answering some of those phone calls with AI, you might want to spend more time on the higher value phone calls and actually have the same number of people but actually get more value from them. Maybe those people will actually do sales rather than customer service because that gives you a competitive edge. So I think right now we are still in the early stages of this technology where we're all reflecting it through what we currently do. I'm not sure of the answer, I can say that honestly. The thing that is uncomfortable though is I think it is changing our jobs. And I say this as someone who self-identifies as a software engineer. The way I did my job 3 years ago, ancient history, 3 years ago, is completely different today because of the existence of Codex and Claude Code. It's a bit uncomfortable. Like I spent my whole year perfecting my craft, and now many of those skills aren't relevant. I like to use the analogy, it's like we're all accountants and Microsoft Excel was invented last weekend. Are you going to be the person who learns pivot tables or the person who's uncomfortable with that new technology?
Right. Yeah,
so we're all going through this, and I just want to acknowledge the
it is a really
discomfort.
Interesting. Well, I mean, that discomfort's really interesting because, of course, we've seen other studies that suggest that when young people in particular rely a lot on ChatGPT or other AI, they don't really have the same sort of cognitive processes as if they were thinking things out themselves. And if you don't really understand the underlying mechanisms of whatever it is you're working on, if you're farming it out at a very early age to this new extraordinary technology, is that going to have an effect on the way people's brains develop, do you think?
I think it likely will, and I think there's positives and negatives. First, I would say modern AI, I think, is an amplifier of agency. If you're a really motivated young person, it gives you more access to information, to tutoring. I actually think what's most remarkable about ChatGPT is every child in the world now has access to personalized tutoring. Something that was perhaps one of the most exclusive things in the world is now basically free. How neat is that? On the other hand, if you're not a motivated young person and you want to cheat on writing your essay, you have that technology available as well. I think we will have to learn. My sister's a public school teacher, and we talk frequently about how hard it is to be a teacher right now. But I'm hopeful, just like the introduction of the calculator in math classes will change the curricula, will change how we measure students. And I'm hopeful that it's actually quite a democratizing force. It's interesting having 3 children, all of whom learn very differently. If you happen to have a English or history or mathematics teacher who doesn't teach in a way that is your style of learning, prior to things like ChatGPT, there was no option other than expensive things like trying to find a tutor. And now you can go home and take a picture of the textbook and ask it to explain visually or explain in audio, whatever your preferences are. So I'm hopeful we're in this just awkward period where we just haven't figured out how to form curricula around the technology, but just like we've done with everything from, there were no laptops in college classes when I was there, and now there are. There was no calculators in the classroom when my parents were growing up, but there were when I was growing up. I'm hopeful that we'll learn to accommodate it, but oh man, I have so much empathy for teachers right now, just because they're just in that period where the technology has outpaced our curricula, and that's a very uncomfortable spot to be in.
And one question I wonder about, in fact, we were debating this in the office the other day, is will it ever be possible to eliminate hallucinations from large language models, or is the underlying technology always going to mean that there will be hallucinations?
Yeah, it's a very nuanced question. So I'll say, I think there are within certain systems you can more or less eliminate hallucinations. Maybe not with 100% effectiveness, but close to that. I think the hallucinations are also a source of these models' creativity as well. And so, essentially you could define, it depends how you define hallucination, but is it using information or extrapolating from information in its training? And so much of the creative process and even the process of invention is just that, extrapolating from the knowledge you have to imagine new things. So I would say hallucination isn't strictly bad. It's bad when the appropriate connotation is when it does something that is actually misguiding the person using it. But if you're using this AI tool as a creative writing foil, or you're using it to as maybe make a storyboard for a film that you're working on, there's a thin line between creativity and hallucination. So my nuanced take on this is these models have a lot of both positive and negative attributes, and depending on the application, you're going to want to either put more narrow guardrails around it or actually widen the guardrails around it for creative applications. And right now, as I said, we're just in the early stages of the technology, so we're all using it the same way and not identifying between industrial applications and creative applications. And I think we just need, honestly, another 4 or 5 years of engineering and development to make these predictable, if you will, do the right thing for the job at hand.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're incredibly bullish about the technology, as are many, many people, but when you look at AI's effects on jobs more broadly, it was quite striking just the other day. London's mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, said that he thought AI could be a weapon of mass destruction of jobs, even in London, when it comes to financial services, professional services. In other words, the sorts of jobs that until now have been relatively immune to technological change. Do you think that he's worrying about nothing, or do you think that in fact we are going to see really quite a large degree of jobs being lost because of AI?
I think first, it's not the wrong question. I think it's very important that when we're making these new technologies, we talk about their impact and mitigating the risk of that impact. So I think it would be irresponsible to say otherwise. The questions I had were similar to our discussion about the automated teller machine or contact centers, which is, I think it absolutely will change jobs, without question. And the question is, this idea that it will take away a job and not create something new is where I have some questions. We traditionally create our economy around the technologies we produce, not the other way around. When the United States was founded in 1776, most of the economy was agrarian. Then we went through the Industrial Revolution and then globalization, which led to the services economy that we have today. The jobs that most people had changed dramatically since then, and we have a very low unemployment now in the country, despite lots of jobs going away. New jobs were created, jobs like podcasting that didn't exist before, or less maybe media-oriented things, but even things like a web developer didn't exist before. I think the thing I think a lot about, and I think is very important for OpenAI to think about, is just the pace with which it's happening. Even if you believe that there will be new jobs created because of AI, over what time scale? And for an individual, do we have the resources available and the time to reskill in that new environment? And I think that's the hard part, because AI adoption is so rapid. Unlike the electrification of the country, it's happening over a matter of years, not decades. The thing I will say to a lot of people, in consulting or software engineering, jobs that certainly are being impacted by AI, is no one's an expert in AI. You and I are just as much of an expert as anyone else, because it's new. And so I think everyone has the opportunity to sort of lean into these technologies and perhaps even accelerate their career by becoming, going back to my analog of an accountant learning Excel, if you're the first person to figure that out, you're going to be the most amazing accountant of all time.
Right.
And so it doesn't make it easier, but I do think what's nice about there's no outside experts your company can bring in.
Right.
Everyone's on an equal playing field. But I do think the speed of adoption is real. I hear this a lot from, as I said, one of the most appropriate things is this technology is actually disrupting software engineering as well. So the people creating it are seeing this happen to their own jobs. And I think there's something, I don't have the correct vocabulary to express it, but there's something appropriate about it that, and I think it is both exciting and I think for the individual, rightfully a little bit nerve-wracking, but I am optimistic over the long term.
What's going to be the big AI question in Davos next year?
I think this year, to put on my optimistic hat again, is I think we'll start to see AI to contribute to science in real ways. I am really excited for AI to prove unproven math conjectures, to contribute to science and discover things that were previously undiscovered. And I'm hopeful that there will be some discussions about some of these impacts of AI, because I think when society can see that AI will actually contribute to the benefit of humanity in those kind of ways, I think we'll change the discussion about AI a lot. And this won't happen next year, but if AI could contribute to help cure some of our uncured diseases, to help with some of the problems that humanity faces from clean energy, battery storage, to drug discovery, curing disease, I think that will really change the conversation around AI in a positive way, and I'm very hopeful for that over the short term.
Okay, we are unfortunately out of time. Bret Taylor, thank you very much. Very interesting to hear so many interesting thoughts there on AI. No longer just a technology story, an economic one as well, that's upending business, investments, politics at an ever faster pace, showing no signs of slowing. Well, our next session is going to step back from AI itself and look at the wider economic environment that it is operating in. Thanks very much, Bret.
Thanks for having me.